After going through the design module, you should now have a finished sketch that is ready to be digitized. In this module, I'll cover a few of the programs you could use, where you can find them, and a few of the techniques you could use to digitize your geofilter. So to start off, I'm going to jump onto the computer and show you which programs you can use and where you can find them. Now, before you can get started digitizing your geofilter, you are of course going to need a photo editing app or a vector artwork app to get started. And there are plenty of different apps and programs you can use. However, I'm going to stick with the industry standard apps, and then I'll show you a free option if you can't afford these. Now, the industry standard for design apps tends to be Adobe products, and these are apps like Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, both of which are actually recommended by Snapchat to use for geofilters. Now, you can get these apps through Adobe Creative Cloud, which is on Adobe's website at adobe.com. And if you go to adobe.com, just make sure at the very bottom that Creative Cloud is selected, and then you could go to the Buy Now button. Now, Adobe Creative Cloud is a subscription, and there are several different packages, plans, and prices that you can choose from depending on your needs. First of all, if you're a student or a teacher, there are discounts on plans to where you'll save probably around 60%. So there are two options for students and teachers. First is the photography package, which is Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop. So if you just want to get Photoshop, you can go with that. However, these are annual plans that are paid monthly. So it is $10 a month. However, you will be locking in your commitment for a year when you do that. So there's also the All Apps plan, which is about $20 a month. And again, this is also an annual plan, but it is paid monthly, so you don't have to pay it all up front. Now, you can go ahead and get the photography plan that just has Adobe Photoshop. However, if you can afford it, I would highly recommend getting the All Apps plan because you get every Creative Cloud app, including Photoshop and including Adobe Illustrator. And Adobe Illustrator is important because the vector artwork program, and this is going to really help out when you are designing your geofilter. Now, Photoshop is a powerful app that can do a lot of graphics work. However, Adobe Illustrator is going to be much easier and faster to use just because it's made specifically for illustrating and creating those graphics. And to give you an example of what Adobe Illustrator can do is we could just go back to that home page, and you could see on this right side you have this illustration with all these fun little graphics, and at the bottom it says made with Adobe Illustrator. And this is a student at Cal Poly, and it's just showing you what you can do with Adobe Illustrator, which this is sort of the aesthetic that Snapchat geofilters have, so it's probably going to be a good idea to go with Adobe Illustrator to get this sort of effect that's a little bit harder to do with Photoshop. So if we just go back, so that is what the students and teachers have to offer as far as the packages for those. Now, if you don't happen to be a student or a teacher, you can go over to the business section if you're a business, or you can go over to the individual section. So we're going to go over to the individual section. Now, as you can see, we have the same two options that we saw in the students and teachers section, which is photography and all apps, as well as two other options, single app and all apps plus Adobe Stock. Now we're going to ignore the all apps plus Adobe Stock option and focus in on the other new option, which is the single app option. Now, the single app option is good if you want to choose a specific app and just pay for that. So for example, if you wanted Adobe Illustrator, you can just choose Illustrator from the drop-down menu and only pay for that app. And this is similar to the photography option. However, the photography option only offers Lightroom and Photoshop, and you can't choose which one you want. So if you wanted Illustrator without paying for all the apps, this is a good option. And this is also good if you don't want to be locked into an annual plan. So there's also an option for a monthly plan. Now, this is of course going to bump up the price, but this also gives you some flexibility to cancel whenever. You could choose just 1 month and then cancel right away. So that's another option. And lastly, with the all apps option, there's also a option for a monthly plan. And this is of course going to bump up the price as well. But again, it gives you flexibility to cancel whenever if you don't want to be locked into a full year of paying monthly that amount. Now, for some reason you can't afford to get Adobe Creative Cloud, there is an alternative that is similar to Photoshop that is a web app that you can use. So let's go over to pixlr.com. And that's pixlr.com, which is pixlr.com. And once you type that into your web browser, you should be brought to this page. And when you scroll down, you'll see two options that says Launch Web App for a Pixlr editor and then Pixlr Express. And you want to choose Pixlr Editor. And then you will be brought to this welcome page where you can then start a new file and start digitizing your geofilter. Now this is a simpler version of a photo editor, and there's actually not a downloadable version of this, so it's only through the website. And if you happen to prefer a downloadable program that's free as well, there's also one called GIMP, and you can find that at gimp.org, and you could quickly download that for Mac or PC. Now in the next lesson, we're going to cover how you can digitize your geofilter using a more organic approach in Adobe Illustrator.